And in Canada, where I'm from, in Alberta, there's a kind of I guess what you would call like a career path that a lot of people follow. And the reason that they do this is because they can make quite a bit of money. They don't need a lot of education at first, but as they get more and more experience in this industry, they start to make a lot more money. So this is a very natural progression for a lot of people to take coming out of school. So as time went on, I always thought, okay, well, eventually I'm going to get into something that I really enjoy. And to me, in my mind, I always wanted to be an architect. I always wanted to design buildings and do these types of things. So in this job, it started to progress where I was doing some technical designing. It was satisfying a certain side of my creativity. But what I didn't realize is that I was going to spend my entire career doing this. And even to this day, I'm working in North Africa right now. I've worked all over the world, pretty much, in the United States, in the UK, even in Eastern Europe. For one, Albania was a certain place of note. So I just wanted to share a little bit about myself and just to let you know kind of where I came from and how I got into this, essentially. So when you look at climate change, a lot of people look at oil and gas or at fossil fuels as being this very evil thing. And I'm not here to tell you that it isn't, but I'm here to tell you that at the moment it's necessary. And so I'm going to go through this presentation, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them for you. You can see up on the screen here, this is a picture of what are called pump jacks. And so there's millions of these all over the planet. So when you think of producing oil, and I don't know, how many people have seen one of these before? Anybody? Okay. Did you always wonder what it was? Did you think it was like farm equipment or something? Anyways, this is connected to, it's basically a simple lever system. So as the weights go around, the lever lifts this string of rods that connects to a pump that's usually about 1.5 kilometers into the ground. So when they drill an oil well, this is what happens. They put a rig onto a certain site where they think that there's oil, and they start drilling. And they drill down and down until they hit what they call the pay zone. So this is where they start to see oil coming back, and they start to see returns on their drilling. So then they put a whole bunch of things into the well to protect it from the environment, to make sure that the oil doesn't seep into the ground as it's coming out of the certain formation. And if you think of the formation, which is where the oil is compressed, it's from millions and millions of years of dirt and soil and rock compressing plant matter and animal matter into what finally degrades down into a carbon base, like an oil, a crude oil. So this is where oil comes from. And these systems are built to pump that oil from the ground. So when they complete, yes?
How much oil does a pump jack get out of the ground every day?
Okay, so on average, one of these will, do you guys know what a cubic meter looks like? Yeah. Okay, so this system, one of these systems in one day, will pump approximately 100 cubic meters. So if you think these are moving, going up and down 7-8 times per minute. So, multiply that times 1,440 minutes in a day, and you get close to 100 meters, cubic meters of fluid per day produced. So, once this oil comes out, it goes into a pipeline, and then it's sent to storage facilities. And then either the storage facility sends it to a refinery, or they put it on a boat and send it to somewhere that has a refinery. And you can see just west of Tarragona here, where all the big red and white stacks are, this is a refinery. So this is taking the oil and it's making it into a variety of things that we use. And some of these things are in plastics, some of these things are in fuels, like diesel and gasoline or petrol. And some of the gases that come out are propane and natural gas with the oil. So these are all used in some form or fashion to make our lives easier. And so, as I go through the presentation, just keep in mind how many things that you can think of that require oil and the byproducts of oil. So, I'll carry on here. You all know what the Mediterranean is, I assume? Okay. So, the amount of oil that the globe uses, that the planet uses in one day is 83 million barrels per day. Okay? That sounds like a lot. So the problem is that the globe is consuming 86 million barrels per day, and that's projected to go up to close to 100 million barrels per day. So imagine how much energy across the world that this is providing, and how many products that they're building with it, and how much it goes into driving your car, or powering the bus, or heating your homes. This is a lot of use. This is a lot of consumption. So when I say that, it's a necessary, let's just say a necessary evil, this is what I mean, is that there's very little that can keep up to this point to provide the energy that we require on the earth. So to give you a bit of scale, the water contained in the Mediterranean Sea is about 23 billion barrels of water. If this were being pumped at the same rate that the oil is being pumped from the earth, the Mediterranean Sea would be empty in under a year. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine just like for a second how much fluid that is, how much water that would be? And think about burning that every day. It's hard to wrap your head around, but it's an amazing amount. So when we look at oil production, a lot of us think, okay, it's dirty, it's oil, it affects the environment, and yes, it does. So when you look at the top picture, this is an average facility that produces oil in Canada, the United States, and Europe. There's very, very strict regulations on environmental and on health and safety. So these are all systems that are very, very well maintained. There's zero tolerance for any type of spill, and any type of spill has to be reported to the government. So if you're thinking about producing oil, this is the model that you want to go with if you have to. When we look at third world oil locations, the lower two pictures are typically what you see. Pretty disgusting. Pretty irresponsible for the environment. The problem is that there's a lot more of these than there are the good ones. So when you get into oil and gas, there's a lot of people who want to make the bottom picture look like the top picture. And so as you go through your career in oil and gas, you do your best, but not everybody does. And not all companies are interested in doing their best. Some of them are just interested in making money. So there's a definite problem with this situation. For instance, we look at the effects on oceans. We all heard about the oil spill from BP down near Texas. They made a movie about it, Deepwater Horizon. Anyways, it's interesting if you get a chance to watch that movie because it shows what it was like on that offshore platform. And the country of Spain actually has done a lot to prevent any type of offshore drilling to maintain the environment in the ocean around it. And for that matter, the amount of drilling or exploration that's done in Spain is very, very small. The government doesn't want this. So we look at groundwater, and this isn't just like your rivers and lakes. when you drill a well that's, say, 1.5 kilometers deep, you pass through all of these layers of rock, these zones as they're called. And there's water, there's fresh water that's in these zones. It has no salt, it's fresh, you can drink it just as it comes out of the ground. What the problem is when these types of things happen, if there's cracks in the well, if they haven't completed it properly, this oil starts to seep into these groundwaters, and then it starts to come into towns like Tarragona and Altafula, and any town that has a source well that provides water to the city, it can be infected or it can be polluted. A lot of illness caused from natural gas being flared. They burn the natural gas if they're not going to use it, and so these fumes go into the air. People and animals breathe this in. It's not a good thing. So the habitat takes a very serious beating, not only from when the company goes in to drill the well. There's ecological damage because they cut down trees, they ruin ecosystems for animals, and sometimes they're very close to towns, so they can start to affect the population of the towns as well. So all of this has a severe effect on what we call climate change. So as we burn all this oil, as we fume the smoke that comes from burning gas or burning diesel or any of these types of things, it's becoming higher and higher and higher. As we grow in population, we have, say, like a 5% average population growth, so this means even more than a 5% increase in the amount of oil that we're going to use every day. So the Earth just simply can't keep up. It won't keep up. But I thought I would show you a few of the things that this affects. And so you can see this picture. And this is near where I work. And so you see where the big flames are coming out? Where I stay is right next to that. I could probably throw a rock and hit that. So it's in my life all the time, every day. And so, for me, I've always had a bit of an internal conflict, and I would say a bit meaning a lot of an internal conflict with the business that I'm in and the industry that I'm in. But fortunately and unfortunately, it's provided me with a very good living. So whenever I'm working, I'm always trying to do my very best to make sure that I do all the things I can do to protect the environment, to protect against spills and doing things the wrong way that can cause accidents. So with enough people like this, it helps to keep the balance. If we look at the graph on the left, there's a large orange portion, and this is considered to be the greatest user of oil and gas. And this is transport. So this is transporting your fruit and vegetables to your grocery store. This is transporting people across the globe. This is transporting people in their cars every single day back and forth to work. This is transporting all kinds of goods and services to all the places on the globe. So this is the major use of the oil and gas. Now, if you look at the industry, this is what goes into your cell phone, what goes into your, the plastic containers that you're making or that you're using for your lunch, or maybe you don't use that, which is better if you don't use that for your lunch. But all of the things that you kind of take as for granted, that I can just use this or buy this piece of plastic, or I can buy this item and it's wrapped in all this plastic. This is contributing. So anytime you see over-packaging, this is contributing to this effect. So when we look at the transportation is the biggest one that we can all help to affect. We can all take public transit. We can all take our bikes. We can all walk. But we all want to go other places and do other things. So we need to find better ways to do this. So this graph indicates the proven oil reserves that still exist under the ground. So 1.6 trillion barrels. This sounds like a lot, but basically by the time you guys are all ready to retire, the oil will be gone. That's it. It will be out. They've found all of the big oil pools. They've pumped them all almost dry. They're finding other ways to extract the oil from even deeper in the ground, but it's more expensive, and it becomes more and more expensive and less cost effective. So from a global standpoint, we really have no choice but to find something to replace oil. So what can we do to reduce this? As I said before, we buy locally, local products. If you buy things that are made within, some people say within a 200-kilometer radius of where you live. If you start to make a practice of this, take public transit. We need to start to adapt to using systems that have less reliance on oil. Like we see the buses in Tarragona have electric drive, so they're using much less diesel as they would have used entirely before. So these are the little, well, these are not little things, but these are big things that we can do. But even yourself, instead of driving, 3 blocks to the store, you ride your bike or you walk. Cities are really becoming aware of the things they need to do in order to make this a more green way of living, and it's making things available to people so that it's easy to not own a car, to not have to take a bus somewhere, to basically to live a much cleaner existence on this planet. So innovation to new technologies is what's going to save us. When we look at the wind farms, and you can see the wind farms west of Tarragona on the ridges, you can see down near Seville the solar panels that are covering the grape vineyards. And again, Spain is actually leading in this resort with their policies towards clean energy. So when you look at the rest of Europe, Spain is actually at the forefront of this clean energy movement. So when you look at these adapted systems, they can really cut down on the transportation, because again, you look at the part of the transportation. Part of that transportation is transporting the oil to the places that it's needed. So when you look at these big boats out in the harbor, these are carrying oil. These are carrying things to make oil. So if we can cut those out, imagine if we even cut that slice of the pie in half. Imagine how much less impact that we have on the earth. We're looking at all types of electric trains. Look at ocean currents. They're putting turbines on the ocean floor, because as you can see every day the tide washes in and there's lots of movement in that water. It can turn turbines and create energy. Geothermal. This basically is drilling down into the ground and using the heat that comes from maybe 400 or 500 meters down. It's very hot once you get down below the surface of the ground. And again, hydroelectric, like using water for powering dams to create power and electricity. So I just use this closing statement here. The key to it is accepting that all of us can make small changes that over time make a big impact on reducing our damage to the earth and increasing climate change. The truth is that we still need oil to keep this planet going, but through open-minded ideas and technology, we can and we must eventually eliminate our reliance on oil and fossil fuels. So, yes?
I have a question. So you said there's 53 years left of oil.
Yes.
What are the major oil companies around the globe doing knowing that there's only 53 years left of oil, are they looking at moving to other forms of renewable energy or no?
Desperately, the companies, and just to name a few, is Shell, Imperial Oil, Mobil. These big companies, Statoil from Norway, these companies are investing billions of dollars into renewable resources. Because when you look at it, if you're running a multi-billion-dollar, maybe even trillion-dollar company, and you can see your end in sight, you can see that in 50 years your company isn't going to exist anymore. You're going to do everything possible to make sure that you have changed your business model in order to offset that, so that you can keep going. And the way it is now, the fact is that they have to. These companies have to look at renewable resources. And so, especially Shell, I would say, is probably the forerunner in the world on this. They sponsor all types of university programs for building cars. A friend of mine was doing his PhD in Cambridge, and they built a hybrid electric car that ran with compressing water and using electric motor assist, that was getting 200 miles to the gallon, so something like 1 liter per 1,000 kilometers or something like that. It was unreal, and it sat 2 people, and it did 100 kilometers an hour. So this was their project, and this was sponsored by Shell. So when you start to look at these different things, it's going to require a lot of money and a lot of smart people to put this together. But yeah, this is, sorry, that was probably a long, an extended answer to your question, but yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Does anybody want to work in the oil and gas industry?
Bob Chula.
Hi.
So the food that we produce, less than we consume.
Correct.
And that's why we try to start with no oil.
Yeah. Yeah, so
But if we make an alternative, these big companies will make this alternative work.
correct. So in some cases, if we stop using as much oil, then that dead end, that time frame is going to extend maybe to another 100 years, or maybe another 200 years, that we can economically use the oil in a lot smarter ways. So when you look at hybrid cars and electric cars, this is going to cut down on the use of oil tremendously. So it's going to allow us to have a little bit of that oil to keep us going until we find that technology, or until someone invents that system that allows us to eliminate the use of oil. Does that answer? Yeah. Okay. So I'll ask again, does anybody want to work in the oil and gas industry? No. I don't either. So, but like I said, it's fortunate and unfortunate that you can make a good living, but it does come at a cost. It's not a good feeling, and it's not. I would much rather be standing up here in front of you, telling you about how I worked for, what's the Sea Shepherd. Have you guys heard of the Sea Shepherd? He sails all over the ocean. He's sponsored by these people to protect the wildlife in the ocean. So he goes after people who are fishing illegally or doing illegal pollution of the planet. So, but yeah, I would much rather tell you that I worked for them. Well, thank you for your attention, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. So, hope you guys have a great afternoon, and I'll say goodbye.